Is the phrase toxic masculinity appropriate? I want to say yes. There are many expressions of what the culture refers to as masculinity that is completely toxic and inappropriate, way outside of the boundaries of what God's design for masculinity and manhood is. Yes. I would also humbly submit and offer this. There is also a toxic war on masculinity, indiscriminate. And that is equally, if not more, dangerous for the church, in my opinion. Is there toxic masculinity? Yes. When we describe masculine, what it means to be like as a man, to be violent and aggressive and sexist and oppressive and just use people, we have the idea and the models of the entrepreneur, the gym rat, the athlete, the playboy. Those are not the source code, the operating system that God has designed for man. It's the virus in the code. We must determine and distinguish between what Nancy Pearcey and Mark Batterson and others call the virus, what the culture says and has said about masculinity, and the operating system, the software code that God has designed. One of them is we could call the real man, the good man, the biblical man. The other is the cultural version of masculinity that is at times very, very problematic. So to lump them all indiscriminately together and to engage in a toxic war against all of that, this is the title of a book that I'm reading now by Nancy Pearcey. I recommend it to all of you, called The Toxic War on Masculinity. To lump those two together is a very, very big problem. Because we must determine between and distinguish between the software of what God has designed men to be and the virus of the culture. I would submit to you this, that the toxic masculinity that we do see in the culture, the answer isn't to eliminate it or to feminize it or to emasculate it. Because when you do not have men in a society, you are left with boys. And I would submit to you that none of the women in this room want to marry a boy, want to raise kids with a boy. None of us want to follow someone in a leadership position that is an immature boy. What we are doing is impeding what God would want for men. Tony Evans is a pastor, writer in Dallas, Texas, alumnus from my seminary. He would say this: it's often said that as the family goes, so goes the culture. We've heard that, true. He said, let's drop a level and say, as men go, so go the family. Fatherhood is incredibly important. We have seen its absence break down in certain parts of our culture and society. It's so very important. And what we're doing is really, really a problem when we see indiscriminately the real toxic masculinity of this false cultural narrative. We don't distinguish that between what God has said, I want man to be. It's not about emotionless strength and just grunting and athleticism and anger and violence. No, God says that has nothing to do with his image in man. His image in man is to be a servant leader, a submissive leader, not just strong, but also soft, and to know when to apply the two. We tell stories of men who lose it and do terrible things in public, harming people, even hurting people, even eliminating people. If you know what I'm talking about, there are kids in the room. We talk about that scenario and we're like, it's mostly men. Yes, but at the same time, Nancy Pearcey would say, do you know the men also on the other side of the weapon who are helping? Those men are men too. You see, one of them is the virus. The other one is the software code. And we must nurture and support and encourage that. That may be part of what Paul is talking about here. Not to masculinize the women in Corinth or emasculate the men, but to say it's really, really important. It's really, really important. I am passionate about this because as a guy who's never been an athlete, who is a little bit more artistic than athletic, who it maybe doesn't fit the mold of the grunt kind of masculine that the culture has suggested we identify as. That's just not been me. But I very much lead my family and love and sacrifice and support and serve my wife and kids. And I want to serve everyone that I'm at. And I feel like in many ways, parts of that is what it means to be a man under God's image. And so we must encourage that, not to the detriment of women, but to the beauty and glory of women. All of us